I had just driven back to my tiny wooden cabin at the end of a dirt road, my tires still leaving a trail of dust floating in the rearview mirror. Honestly, in that moment, I only had two things on my mind: turning off the AC and pouring a glass of iced tea. But life's never that simple. Before my hand could even reach the AC button, a familiar sound cut through the quiet: the shrill wail of police sirens, like someone had just hit skip intro on the peaceful little movie I was living in. Two patrol cars crept slowly onto the narrow road, their tires crunching the gravel in a way that was somehow more nerve-wracking than a horror movie soundtrack. An older cop frowned at a map, while the younger one gripped his radio like he was about to call in reinforcements. I leaned out the window, forcing a polite smile. "Beautiful afternoon, huh? Anything I can do for you, gentlemen?" Before the older guy could even speak, the younger one cut him off. "We got a report about an unauthorized intruder in this community, and the name is you." I almost laughed. An intruder? Into the cabin I built myself, log by log, stone by stone? I slipped off my sunglasses, stepped out of the car, and waved toward the house across the way. Let me guess, the lady over there with the oversized clipboard, right? Kinda early to be calling it trespassing, considering this land. I paused for dramatic effect. Belongs to me. The two cops glanced at each other, eyes wide with surprise. Me? I just sighed. In my head, I thought, the game has begun. And Karen picked the wrong opponent. The woman across the street was the real star of this story. Petite, with a wiry little frame, curly hair springing out like coiled springs, and of course, her ultimate weapon, a massive clipboard plastered with blinding red sticky notes. If a clipboard were a crown, trust me, she'd be the undisputed queen of the neighborhood. The first time I met Queen Karen was while I was hauling a suitcase from my car to the cabin. What would a normal person say in that moment? Something like, "Welcome to the neighborhood," or at the very least, "Hi, new neighbor." But no. Her opening line was, "You can't park here. This community has strict rules for non-residents." I just stood there, sunglasses still on, suitcase still in my hand, and laughed. "Oh, hello. I haven't even had a chance to unpack yet." Karen squinted, like she was trying to read my license plate through the cloud of dust on the road. Her voice was sharp as a knife. "I don't know who you are. This is a gated community. We have an HOA. We have rules." I hoisted the bag onto my shoulder, still wearing my polite smile. "Yep, I'm aware. I'm the one who signed most of the land lease agreements in this community." The air grew thick, like that moment in a movie when the villain suddenly realizes they've picked the wrong script. Karen's face flushed red, and she spun on her heel, walking away briskly, like staying 1 second longer might shatter her illusion of power. I figured that was it. An awkward introduction, nothing more. Maybe tomorrow we'd exchange a normal greeting. But if you've ever met a real Karen, you know, that was only the warm-up. I thought after that awkward "welcome to the neighborhood" fiasco, Karen would leave me alone. But no, that was just the overture. With Karen, everything had to be a full-blown multi-act play. And me? I was the unwilling actor cast in her drama. Barely 10 minutes after I stepped inside the cabin, hadn't even finished making a glass of iced tea, the sirens wailed again. The same two patrol cars rolled back up. I actually laughed and shook my head. That fast? Turns out Karen had called them a second time, now claiming I was a dangerous trespasser. Dangerous. Right. I pulled out a fat stack of documents, land deeds, maps, contracts. The cops looked at me, then at Karen, with that expression that said it all. Great. Another self-appointed HOA president. You'd think she'd stop there. Of course not. The next morning, I opened my front door to find a bright red notice slapped onto my wooden gate. Big bold letters. Warning. Illegal construction. HOA under investigation. Signed, Karen H., I chuckled, peeled it off carefully, folded it like a keepsake. Some people might have been furious. Me? I found it oddly entertaining. Act 2 had begun, but Act 3, that's when my blood boiled. Around noon, coming back from town, I found my cabin vandalized. Across the door, in giant red spray paint, "Trespasser" looked like the title of some bargain bin Netflix thriller. My garden fence was trampled, my handmade wooden mailbox smashed flat. I just stood there, staring at the mess, and thought, all right, Karen, game on. If you've ever built something with your own two hands, you'll understand the feeling. Every plank of wood, every nail, every drop of sweat. And then some clipboard-wielding tyrant comes along and treats it all like a prop in her bad play. Trust me, that's when the anger starts to burn. Not just because of the damage, but because of the sheer contempt behind it. But I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I pulled out my phone and documented everything. Photos from every angle, videos of every smear of paint, every footprint in the dirt. Careful, methodical, like a detective collecting evidence, because I knew the show wasn't over. And when the final act came, Karen would have to face the thing she hated most: paperwork, signatures, legal seals. And sure enough, the following evening, Karen played her grand finale. An emergency meeting at her house. Flyers had been shoved under doors, complete with a blurry, zoomed-in photo of my cabin taken from behind some bushes. Looked exactly like a horror movie poster. Beneath it, bold text screamed, "Protect our community. Meeting tomorrow, 6 p.m. at my house." I laughed out loud. Protect the community. From who? The actual landowner? Fine. If Karen wanted a show, I'd give her one, but I wouldn't come empty-handed. No chains? No cops? My weapon of choice? A thick crimson-red binder stuffed with legal documents, and a tray of fresh cornbread, still warm. That evening, at exactly 5:59 p.m., I knocked on Karen's door. In my left hand, I carried a steaming tray of cornbread. In my right, a thick crimson-red binder that looked like a law school textbook. I figured Karen had prepared her grand HOA conference performance, but I was certain she hadn't prepared for the appearance of the actual landowner. The door opened. Inside, 7 people sat stiffly on folding chairs, the dim yellow light casting tense shadows across their faces. In the center of the room, Karen was mid-speech, passionately warning them about the threat of a stranger building an illegal cabin. I smiled faintly and walked straight in. "Good evening, everyone," I said, raising a hand before setting the cornbread in the middle of the table. I brought a little snack and a few documents. Thought it might make the meeting a bit more lively. The air froze. Karen fell silent, her eyes wide as if she'd just seen a ghost. Someone coughed awkwardly. Another person stared down at their fingernails. I pulled the binder open, drew out a large land survey map, and spread it across the table. The paper crackled loudly, the only sound in the room besides Karen's pounding heartbeat. "This," I said, tapping the map, "is from the county recorder's office. This parcel of land, this road, the western lake, and the 8 surrounding lots, they're all the legal property of my company. And that company, unfortunately," I paused for effect, "has exactly one shareholder, me." From the corner, a woman stammered, "Wait, does that mean my house is on your land too?" I nodded gently. "Correct, and your lease is valid for another 96 years, as long as no one violates the terms." Then I turned to Karen, my voice smooth as honey. "Unfortunately, someone has violated at least 3. 1, building a fence past the legal boundary. 2, blocking a shared road. 3, hosting community events on my private property without permission." Karen's face flushed crimson. Her voice shook, but she still managed to shout, "You can't threaten us with paperwork. This is a community. We have rights." I smiled and flipped to another page, pointing at her signature. "This is your lease, Karen H., signed April 7th, 3 years ago. Clause 12 states very clearly that any construction changes or community events require written approval from the landowner. You can call it a threat. I call it the law." The room cracked open with tension. A man in the back burst out laughing. Others began glancing at each other, then at Karen, not with trust, but with doubt. I closed the binder softly and said, "I don't want conflict. I want peace. If everyone respects the boundaries, I promise to be the best neighbor you've ever had. Now then, who wants some warm cornbread?" I turned toward the door, leaving behind a silent room. Karen stood frozen, clutching her clipboard to her chest as though it were her last shred of power. And the others? They had just realized that the stranger they were warned about was, in fact, the man who owned the entire stage they'd been standing on. I thought after the cornbread and red binder meeting, the game was over. But with Karen, the word defeat doesn't exist. She was like a gamer who'd been knocked out but kept hammering the continue button. And this time, Karen brought out her ultimate weapon: chains. The next morning, as I drove back toward the cabin, the little dirt road had been turned into a makeshift checkpoint. A heavy steel chain stretched between 2 pine trees, with a wooden sign dangling from it, painted blood red: "Residents only, no trespassing." all caps, screaming red like a military warning. And of course, who was standing there, arms folded across her chest as if she'd just claimed a glorious victory? Right, Karen, the clipboard queen herself. I stopped the car, rolled down the window, and stared. Instead of anger, I laughed. Not the cheerful kind of laugh, more like the, all right, you really went all in this time kind. I didn't touch the chain, didn't argue. I just pulled out my phone, snapped photos, shot video from every angle, and calmly turned the car around. That afternoon, I started making calls. A property dispute attorney, the county recorder's office, the sheriff's department, and even a tow and lock removal service. In short, I booked myself an entire supporting cast for the final act. By noon the next day, I was back at the roadblock. But I wasn't alone. At my side stood two sheriff's deputies, a land survey inspector, a county resources officer, and a tow truck driver in a hard hat who looked like a cameo from an action movie. I sipped my still hot coffee and watched as Karen stormed out of her house, face red and ready to explode. "You people can't be here without the residents' permission," she shrieked, finger trembling as she pointed at me. One deputy stepped forward, voice calm, as if reading from a well-worn script. "Ma'am, this road is private property under the ownership of Mr. Holton. By placing a chain barrier here, you're in violation of both your lease agreement and local traffic law." Karen's eyes blazed as she screamed, "You're abusing your power! You're threatening me!" I calmly set my coffee on the hood of the car, pulled a sealed envelope with a red legal stamp from my pocket, and handed it to her. "This is a notice of lease termination. Legal, binding, effective in 30 days. After that, the sheriff's office will enforce it under state law." The silence was absolute. Karen stumbled back a step, face pale as if all the blood had drained out. You can't do this." I met her eyes, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can, and I am." The deputy nodded in confirmation, while the inspector added, "All documents are valid. If anyone else erects an unauthorized barrier, Mr. Holton has the same right to terminate their lease." Just then a voice called from down the road, "Wait, does that mean the path to the fishing lake belongs to him too?" A man clutching a fishing rod approached, looking rattled. I nodded. The lake, the woods, the trails, it's all company property. And in that moment, I saw the shift. Every pair of eyes turned away from Karen. No sympathy, no backup, just a heavy, suffocating silence. Karen stood frozen, still clutching her clipboard like it was the last scrap of power she had left. I took another sip of coffee, surveying the scene, and thought, this time, Karen's out of lives. 2 weeks later, Karen was gone. No flyers, no blinding red warning notices, no more emergency meetings. Just a moving truck packed with cardboard boxes pulling out quietly. The neighbors whispered that she'd moved to the next state. Some even claimed she was lawyering up to sue me back. Me? I couldn't care less, because from the moment Karen left, the forest finally gave me what I'd been searching for all along. Silence. That afternoon, I sat on the cabin porch. The breeze from the lake brushed gently against my face. The pines whispered like they were sighing, "Peace at last." Condensation dripped down the side of a cold beer on the table, and I cracked open the old book I'd left unfinished months ago. Out on the water, a flock of ducks landed, rippling the lake in small, even waves. No more clipboards flashing from the bushes. No more residents-only signs painted in red. No more fake notices pretending to be law. Just me, the cabin, and a silence worth more than gold. Some people said I went too far, that I should have let it go, swallowed my pride. But I see it differently. When someone twists nonsense into rules, that's exactly when the real law needs to step in. I didn't shout. I didn't build fences. I didn't rally a mob. I just brought forward the truth and a stack of papers stamped and signed. Simple as that. And you know what? This world is full of self-appointed Karens of the HOA. Clipboard in hand, they crown themselves queens. Get a handful of people to nod along, and suddenly they think they are the law. If you've ever dealt with someone like that, the kind who invent rules out of thin air, point fingers, and boss everyone around, drop your story in the comments. I'll read them all. Who knows? Your story might just become the next episode. And if you think this little deed smackdown was sharp enough, sweet enough, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next time a FHOA goes down in flames. Hotter than ghost peppers in the Arizona desert. As for me, I'll just sit here, take another sip of cold beer, turn another page, and smile at one simple truth: when you own the land, Karen, in the end, was only ever a guest.